Okay, filming. Name and part? No.
What am I running
I'll
for?
cut this. Cut.
Yeah. Oh God, she's hot.
Okay. Yeah, no, it makes no difference apparently. I thought
It's
it.
just always in your
No, I
bloodstream,
actually like. No, I thought it actually made me dumber, and then I tried to do smart stuff, and it has no effect on my brain. I've learned, so I have no excuse. Nothing is because I'm high. And who are you?
My name is Menard, and I'm running for Vancouver Park Board Commissioner. And there goes the plane.
And there goes that plane again. Wonderful.
Bloody hell. It's a float plane, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that feels good.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. Go ahead.
You want to start, or you want me to just jump in?
I think we should just leave it as is. Yeah.
Cool. My name is Liam Murphy Menard, and I'm running for Vancouver Park Board Commissioner.
Wonderful. Do you want me to shoot you questions, or why don't you freeform?
What do you want to know?
Oh, now I don't have my questions up.
Oh, we could just go into a little bio, a little bit of a...
Yeah, tell me about yourself a little bit.
I'm a 27-year-old candidate, born and raised in Vancouver, in Fairview neighborhood behind us here. I'm the president and chairman of the board of directors for the False Creek Community Association, the youngest community association president in the history of the city. Through that role, it allowed me to build relationships with Park Board, so I have a deep understanding of the recreation side of Park Board and the administration and the operations of the community centers. I think our community centers are hubs that could be utilized in ways that they're not. I have a good sense of how to utilize our community centers to help us with things like food security, creating programs for at-risk youth. But I think in order to do that, we need somebody on the park board that can talk to the community association presidents in their language and be able to understand and already have relationships with these community association presidents. I already have those relationships, and I think that utilizes me and mobilizes me to be the perfect person to be able to help us utilize these community centers in ways that they're not currently being utilized. I also think having a younger voice, somebody that's in their 20s on park board, is something that's badly needed. I think that our elected bodies have really pushed out the folks under the age of 30, and having somebody that is 27 on this park board, I think would be a great asset, not just for folks under 30 years old, but just for everybody in the city to be able to have a different perspective.
Yeah, what made you want to do that so young? Because this isn't your first bit of politicking here.
Yeah, I mean, Vancouver's my home, right? I think the city has changed quite a lot during the 27 years that I've lived here. And I think that the issues have changed quite a lot too. Park Board originally was a board that focused primarily on, grass fields and swimming pools, and I think has now moved into a situation where we have more complex issues, things like homeless camps and community centers that need renovations. And I think we need people on those boards that can understand those issues. In my day job, I work as a supportive housing manager, working with folks that deal with homelessness, addictions, and mental health. And I think that's a voice that's badly needed on Park Board, especially as the issues we're continuing to deal with become more and more complex. As a younger person, I want to stay in the city. I want to live in the city long term, but it's hard to see a future when our voices are being shut out of these boardrooms. And so I decided to run to be able to try and provide a voice to that side of the population of the city that feels they're being pushed out of those boardrooms and feels that their voices aren't being heard.
Appreciate that. What are your top 3 priorities?
So again, like I said at the start, I want to be able to provide a little bit of a new angle when it comes to the community center associations, be able to fight for some more funding, new renovations for our community hubs. I think COVID has really shown us that our emergency hubs, our community centers need to be properly utilized and need to be taken care of. We weren't prepared for a pandemic, and as a result, we really struggled. I think we have an opportunity right now to rectify that by putting more money into our community hubs and into our emergency hubs. So that's something that I want to do as a top priority. I think through that, I'd like to provide more support for at-risk youth. I think the community centers can act as hubs to help with food security and at-risk youth. And I think that that's a way we can prevent a lot of younger folks that don't feel that they have a place in this city from ending up in the street or ending up falling into addictions and mental health complications, providing those supports that they need right now before they need them. And I think working with the homeless encampments, like I said, being able to provide a long-term sustainable solution that is moral and is human, but also factors in the needs and the culture of the folks that are currently living in these homeless encampments. Not viewing them as a problem, but viewing them as the result of a problem, and being able to address this in a way that factors not just the folks on the ground, but also utilizing the boardrooms and our elected officials in the way that they're supposed to be utilized. Because I feel right now we have a lot of people that are sitting there not doing their job, pushing inaction, and is creating the further problems. And if they're not going to act, then I think we need to put people in who have the courage and have the knowledge and are willing to act to fix these problems.
Brilliant. What does housing mean to you?
Well, housing can be defined in a number of different ways, right? I think for me, housing is, the basis of it is the idea of a shelter. And I think a shelter can come in many forms. As I already said, the community centers can act as shelters if properly utilized. But I do think that building homes and houses for folks is important to be able to put a roof over people's heads and have them feel that they have a shelter and a place that they can go, right? The community associations can act as this, but I do think that a lot of folks right now that don't have access to housing have a sense of home. And I think for us, housing moving forward needs to be finding a concrete place we can take that sense of home that's currently in places like the downtown east side, Oppenheimer Park, and being able to move that sense of home into a concrete place where it can continue to thrive and continue to flourish and maintain the culture that currently exists there.
Okay, what are your plans for homelessness?
Well, I think as a park board commissioner, I think I need to act as a steward for folks that are living in the homeless camps and dealing with homelessness. There's quite a lot of things as a park board commissioner that's outside of my jurisdiction, and I do think that I do have a duty to be able to speak on those to other levels of government. I think I need to work with the mayor's office and work with the city councilors, but also work with the provincial and federal governments and be able to say, look, we need to work together to solve this problem. We need to really sit down at the same table, speak to folks who are dealing with this, and be able to come up with a solution for this. I think I have a responsibility as the lowest level of government here to be able to have those relationships, both managing down to the folks that are living on the street, but also managing up to the higher levels of government. That's something that I understand and something I want to continue to work on.
Okay, what do you think has gone wrong in our downtown east side?
That's a good question.
Big pause, yeah.
It's a complicated question,
yeah.
Right? It's going to have a complicated answer. I think a lot of the folks that are living in the downtown east side and the day-to-day issues that they struggle with, I think have been disregarded. And I think that a lot of our political bodies have been dominated by folks that don't live in the downtown east side, don't go near the downtown east side, and as a result, not only are they not aware of the issues that are going on there, but they've purposefully turned a blind eye to that. It went, that doesn't affect my life. I don't go near that neighborhood, and so I don't need to understand those issues. I think as an elected official, you need to speak on everybody in the city, and the issues that are happening on the east side or on the west side, I think need to be addressed. If you're living on the west side of the city, that doesn't mean that you're not going to address the issues in the downtown east side.
Right.
I think that's been the central root of this, is I think that because we lack elected officials that really care about issues in the downtown east side, they've been neglected. And that's something that I think makes me different, is yes, I was brought up in the center of the city, but I do care about issues that are happening in the east side of the city, that are happening in the downtown east side, and I want to put a lens on that side of the city.
Right, so what do you think the way forward is in our downtown east side?
I think having advocates in the elected bodies, I think, is important. I think that's one of the things I can really bring to the table is being on the Vancouver Park Board, being an advocate for folks in the downtown east side. I do think the way forward is to be able to continue to speak your truth. Don't let this push you down. Continue to understand that, yes, the struggles you're going through are real and deserve to be addressed. And being able to find folks that are going to speak on your behalf, not just in the public domain, but also in the political domain. That's why this election is so important, voting for folks that you know are going to speak on your issues and listen to your truth and listen to what you're going through on a day-to-day basis and say, I'm going to come up with a solution for it, and then actually acting on it. Because it's very easy to say something, it's a lot harder to actually act on it.
Absolutely. So what do you think went wrong with the last administration?
I think part of it is again, not addressing those issues or feeling like
so much
feeling
activity.
like those issues don't directly affect their lives. And so I think that as humans, we have a tendency to go, oh, if this doesn't directly affect my life, I don't really care about it. We saw that at the start of COVID, right? When COVID started to spring up in Asia, a lot of people went, it doesn't really matter. It's not in my backyard. And then we got hit with it immediately afterwards, and all of a sudden it became our problem. I think we see a lot of that in our elected officials over the last 4 years, is I think a lot of folks going, it's not in my backyard, so I don't really care that much about it. But it's an issue that needs to be addressed, and that's something I hope we can fix in this election, is bringing folks that either are from that area or folks that understand that yes, these issues need to be addressed and need to be put at the forefront, even if they might not directly impact our lives. This is something, as the president of the community association, I pushed a ton for more childcare, and one of the things that a lot of people in the community didn't seem to understand was, why would I care so much about childcare if I don't have kids, as somebody who's very young? And I think for me, the important thing is, it's not about if it directly impacts me, it's the right thing to do, and it impacts people's lives. And I think we need to elect people that are going to do what the right thing to do is, regardless if it directly impacts their lives in a positive way or not.
I like that. What will you do better?
I think, again, taking a different perspective onto the issues in the downtown east side, I think is really important. But I do think being visible and being boots on the ground is important. I think we need a new generation of politician that is willing to be face up, being able to be there in the public and be accountable, and not be afraid to get their hands dirty. I think we're at a time right now where there's so many issues going on. We need our elected officials to be front and center and be leading. We need leaders, not just politicians. And I think that's coming, but I do think that the only way we can get there is by electing the right people in those positions. That's one of the things I want to do differently, is I want to be a leader, not just an elected politician. And I understand what that means because I've been doing it for as long as I can remember. Great.
What do you have no idea how to do?
I think having a more comprehensive knowledge of nature and plants is something I need to work on. I'm not a botanist by trade, and I know that's something that on the last park board we had quite a few plant experts. As somebody who's representing the park board, I know that it's a multifaceted issue. We have community associations, we have homeless camps, but it does also deal with things like biodiversity and nature and plants. And that's
which we didn't bring up before, sorry to interrupt you, but it could be a really interesting involvement with Indigenous people as well in terms of that botany.
Completely. And I do think that a lot of that is unlearning a lot of the colonial things, the knowledge that I've been taught, and being able to relearn a lot of the traditional Indigenous knowledge. And I think that that's an area that I want to continue to work on. And I think while I'm continuing to learn more about the native vegetation and more about the greenery that's around me, which is something I continue to do, I want to harness into some of that traditional knowledge and be able to factor in a lot of that traditional knowledge, because I feel like, the elders have been here since time immemorial, and I think that there's a lot we can learn from folks that to this point have really been shut out of decision-making bodies.
Yeah. Speaking of which, what do younger voters care about?
I think younger voters want to feel like their voices are being factored into decision making. I think a lot of younger people have felt like their opinion doesn't matter, or they don't see a future in this city because nobody has ever come to them and said, hey, what do you want, or what type of city do you want to see moving forward?
Yeah, even as simple as drinking in the park, right?
Yeah, even something as simple as drinking in the park. I think that the laws in this city, a lot of them can be updated. I think there's quite a lot of outdated bylaws that do need to be brought up to modern code and better reflect the modern values of the city. I think drinking in parks is a great example of one of those issues. And I do think that having somebody on the park board that represents younger people's interests, I think is a great first step towards working towards that, right? I'm not a 40-year-old who's learning from my nephew about what young people care about. Like, I live about this on a day-to-day, right? This is my life, and it's very easy to be able to get in and be able to speak from a younger person perspective because I am a younger person, and I think that's very different, and I think sometimes different is good, and I think the city is ready for a different voice.
Yeah, especially for
voice.
parks. I think it's really interesting. It's cool that you've come up. What do older voters care about?
I think a lot of older folks, especially those that have come to the city in the 70s and 80s, really feel a sense of discovery and protection over the city. I think a lot of folks came to the city when it was smaller, a little bit of a hidden gem before the Olympics, and felt that, you know, they had discovered the city and it's their home and they want to protect it.
Awkward.
And so I do think that a lot of older folks feel this need to want to protect the city and protect the city that they came to fall in love with, right? Just as we fall in love with our first crush and we keep holding on to that. I think a lot of older folks have fallen in love with a type of Vancouver or a vision of Vancouver that is quickly becoming outdated. You know, change is inevitable. Change is going to happen, and I think change is happening. So I think with a lot of older folks, their top priority is holding on to the Vancouver that they fell in love with and continuing to make sure that Vancouver doesn't change too quickly and move away from the city that they decided to buy a house in and raise their kids in. Which is something I can understand. I mean, you know, there are specific places that I went to growing up in the city that I'd love to take my kids to, and I'd love to take my grandkids to and show them the places I went to when I was younger. So I can relate to it from that side. But again, like I said, change is inevitable, and I think it's time that we have some younger folks on the boards that can help direct that change in the way that we want to see fit and allow younger folks being brought up in the city to feel that there is a place for them in the city moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, lovely. Just your name and socials again to wrap it up.
My name is Liam Murphy Menard, and I am a 27-year-old candidate running for Vancouver Park Board Commissioner.
And where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me at my website, liammenard.ca. You can check me out on VoteMate. You can check me out on our downtown east side. Little plug there for you.
Yeah.
And all social media channels. If you look up Liam Murphy Menard, I come up. So I'm pretty active on Instagram. You can follow me on my Instagram account. And pretty active in the city. So if you see me, come say hi and let's talk. Let's talk about what type of city you want to see, what type of changes you want to see moving forward. And yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever the next couple months look like.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.